The secret text that changed everything I found out. My wife was cheating through a pizza delivery app notification. Not the way you'd expect to discover your marriage was a lie, but life has a twisted sense of humor. If you're into honest stories about relationships, trust, and betrayal, hit that follow button. You won't want to miss the next one. It was 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in bed, scrolling through work emails when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a notification. Your order from Mario's Pizza has been delivered to 1247 Oakwood Street. I stared at the address. We lived at 582 Pine Avenue. She was supposedly at her book club meeting that ended at 9 p.m. The meeting that happened every Tuesday for the past 6 months. The meeting I'd never questioned because I trusted her completely. My hands were shaking as I picked up her phone. No passcode. She'd always said she had nothing to hide. The pizza app showed an order placed at 10:45 p.m. Large pepperoni, extra cheese, delivered to 1247 Oakwood Street, apartment 3B. Special instructions: knock softly, baby is sleeping. Baby is sleeping. We didn't have a baby. We'd been trying for 2 years with no luck. I sat there in our king-size bed, staring at a pizza order that just shattered my entire world. My wife of 7 years, the woman who cried during romantic movies and made me promise to never keep secrets from her, was at another man's apartment at 11:30 p.m., ordering pizza with instructions about a baby. The front door clicked open downstairs. "Honey, I'm home." Her voice carried up the stairs, cheerful and normal, like she hadn't just destroyed everything. Book club ran late again. You know how Rachel gets when we're discussing romance novels. I quickly put her phone back on the nightstand and pretended to be asleep. She slipped into bed 20 minutes later, smelling like unfamiliar cologne and pizza grease. For the first time in 7 years, I lay next to my wife and felt like I was sleeping next to a stranger. But here's the thing about discovering betrayal. It changes everything and nothing all at once. The next morning, she made coffee exactly the way I liked it. She kissed my forehead before work. She reminded me about my dentist appointment and asked what I wanted for dinner. The same routine we'd followed for years, except now I knew it was all a performance. I called in sick to work. I had to see 1247 Oakwood Street for myself. It was a nice complex about 15 minutes from our house. Modern, expensive, the kind of place young professionals lived. I parked across the street and waited, feeling like a stalker but unable to leave. At 2:30 p.m., a man emerged from the building. Tall, athletic, probably early 30s. He was carrying a baby car seat. A baby. I followed him to a nearby Starbucks, where he met with another man who looked exactly like him. Twins. One had a wedding ring, one didn't. The one with the baby was married. The one without was my wife's. What? Boyfriend? Affair partner? The father of the child she'd apparently been hiding from me? I sat in my car outside that Starbucks for 2 hours, watching this man play with a baby that could have been mine in another life. When they finally left, I followed the unmarried twin back to Oakwood Street, apartment 3B. That evening, I cooked dinner. Chicken parmesan, her favorite. I set the table with our wedding china and opened a bottle of wine. When she walked in at 6:15, she smiled and said it smelled amazing. "How was book club last night?" I asked, pouring her wine. "Oh, same drama as always. Rachel and Sandra got into it about whether the love interest in this month's book was too controlling or just passionate." She laughed and took a sip of wine. I sided with passionate, obviously. "Obviously," I agreed. "What book are you reading this month?" She paused, fork halfway to her mouth. It's called The Heart Remembers, about a woman who falls in love with her late husband's brother." "Interesting premise," I said. "Is it any good?" "Really good, very, emotional." She was looking at her plate now, not at me. I pulled out my phone and Googled The Heart Remembers book. Nothing. No book by that title existed. "What's the author's name?" I asked casually. "Jennifer Morrison," on another pause. "She's not very well known." I Googled Jennifer Morrison books, nothing related to romance novels. Jennifer Morrison was an actress, not an author. Sounds like my kind of book, I said. Maybe I'll borrow it when you're done. Oh, it's Rachel's copy. She's very protective of her books. Lie after lie after lie. After dinner, I helped her with the dishes. Normal conversation about our days, her work, my work. She mentioned a client presentation she had to give on Friday, asked if I wanted to watch a movie, suggested we plan a weekend trip soon. We hadn't been anywhere in months. All of it felt surreal. This woman who was lying to my face about book clubs and authors and Tuesday nights was the same woman I'd promised to love forever. The same woman who wore my grandmother's ring and had my last name, in joint bank accounts and shared dreams about our future children. Children. Emma, I said as we settled onto the couch, I've been thinking about the fertility specialist again. Her entire body tensed. I thought we decided to take a break from all that. We did, but maybe it's time to try again. We're not getting any younger. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the TV without seeing it. Let's just see what happens naturally for a while longer. We've been seeing what happens naturally for 2 years. I know, but the tests and treatments are so stressful. Maybe if we just relax about it. She trailed off, and I wondered if she was thinking about the baby in apartment 3B. The baby that proved she could get pregnant just fine, just not with me. That night, after she fell asleep, I went through her phone again. The pizza app was deleted. Her text messages with anyone named Rachel had been erased. Her call log was clean, but she'd forgotten about her photo gallery. Buried in thousands of photos were pictures I'd never seen. A sonogram dated 4 months ago. Photos of a nursery being decorated. Pictures of her with a man I now recognized. The unmarried twin from Starbucks. Her hand on her belly, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. And then, the most devastating one. A photo of her in a hospital bed, exhausted but glowing, holding a newborn baby. The timestamp showed it was taken 6 weeks ago. The same week she'd told me she had food poisoning and couldn't keep anything down for 3 days. She hadn't had food poisoning. She'd given birth to someone else's child, while married to me. I set her phone down and walked to our bathroom. In the mirror, I looked at a man I barely recognized. 7 years of marriage, 2 years of trying for a baby, countless conversations about our future family, and she'd been living a completely separate life with another man, with their baby. The next morning was Wednesday. Her book club wasn't until the following Tuesday, but I had a plan. I'm going to work late tonight, I told her over breakfast. Big project deadline. How late? She asked, buttering her toast. Probably won't be home until after midnight. Don't wait up. She nodded, already distracted by something on her phone. Probably a text from him. I went to work but left at 5 p.m. and drove to Oakwood Street. I parked where I had a clear view of apartment 3B and waited. At 6:30 she arrived. She had a key. She let herself into his apartment like she lived there. I sat in my car for 4 hours, watching the windows of apartment 3B. The lights were on. I could see shadows moving around inside. At one point, I saw her silhouette in the window, holding something small. The baby, my phone buzzed. Text from Emma. Book club is running really late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you. I typed back, no problem. Love you too. The lie felt bitter in my mouth. At 11 p.m., I drove home and went to bed. She came home at 1:30 a.m., slipping into bed carefully, thinking I was asleep. She smelled like baby powder and that same unfamiliar cologne. For the second night in a row, I lay next to my wife, feeling like a stranger in my own life. Thursday morning, I made a decision. I called a private investigator. I need to know everything, I told him. How long it's been going on, who he is, everything about the baby. I need proof. This is going to be painful, he warned me. Are you sure you want to know the details? I'm already living with the details. I just need them documented. By Friday afternoon, I had a thick manila envelope filled with photographs, documents, and a timeline that made me sick to my stomach. Her affair had been going on for 8 months. The man was Marcus Chen, 32, unmarried, worked in marketing for a tech startup. His twin brother David was married with 2 kids, which explained the baby confusion at Starbucks. Marcus and Emma had met at a coffee shop near her office. She'd been telling him she was separated and going through a divorce. She'd been telling me she was at book club every Tuesday and Thursday, when she was actually spending those nights at his apartment. The baby was born 6 weeks ago. DNA test confirmed Marcus was the father, which meant she'd conceived while we were actively trying to get pregnant. While I was taking vitamins and timing everything perfectly and holding her hand through negative pregnancy test after negative pregnancy test, she was carrying another man's child. The most devastating detail, she'd named the baby Oliver, the same name we'd chosen for our future son. That night, I cooked dinner again. Steak this time, with all her favorite sides. I opened our best wine and set out candles. "What's the occasion?" she asked when she got home. "Do I need an occasion to celebrate my beautiful wife?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're sweet. How was your day?" "Productive, very productive. How was yours?" "Busy, client presentations, meetings, the usual." We made small talk through dinner. She mentioned weekend plans, a new restaurant she wanted to try, a movie she'd heard about. Normal conversation that felt like we were reading from a script neither of us believed in anymore. After dinner, I poured her another glass of wine. "Emma," I said, sitting across from her at our dining room table, "we need to talk." Something in my tone made her freeze. "About what?" I pulled out the manila envelope and set it on the table between us. "About Oliver." The color drained from her face. The wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, red wine spreading across the hardwood like blood. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered. I opened the envelope and pulled out the first photograph, her leaving Oakwood Street with a baby carrier. "Oliver Chen, born 6 weeks ago. Your son, with Marcus." She started crying immediately. Not the gentle tears I'd seen her cry during movies, but harsh, desperate sobs that shook her entire body. "How long have you known?" she asked between gasps. "Since Tuesday night." "Pizza delivery notification." She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "Pizza? You ordered food to his apartment. I saw the address." "Oh, God." She put her head in her hands. "This isn't how you were supposed to find out." "How was I supposed to find out? Were you ever going to tell me?" Silence. "Were you?" I pressed. "I don't know. I didn't plan any of this. It just happened." A 8-month affair and a baby just happened? It wasn't supposed to go this far. It started as just talking. He listened to me. He made me feel interesting and desired, and I didn't. She looked at me with something that might have been regret. We'd gotten so distant. You were always working. I was always working. We barely talked anymore, except about bills and schedules and trying to get pregnant. It felt like we were roommates, not lovers. "So you found a lover?" It wasn't like that at first. We were just friends. Coffee dates, long conversations. He made me remember who I used to be before I became half of a couple. When did it become more than coffee? 4 months into the friendship, we'd gotten close, and one day, she shrugged helplessly. One day we kissed. And then everything changed. Being with him felt like waking up from a dream, like I'd been sleepwalking through my life, and suddenly I was awake again. I pulled out another photo, her in the hospital bed with the baby. "You gave birth to his child while married to me?" "Yes." "You named him Oliver, the name we chose together?" "Yes." "You've been spending 2 nights a week playing house with them while coming home to me and pretending everything was normal?" "Yes." Her honesty was somehow worse than the lies had been. "Do you love him?" I asked. She nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. "Yes." "Do you love me?" A long pause. "I don't know anymore. I love who you used to be. I love our history together. But the man I fell in love with? I can't remember the last time I felt connected to him. To me. You can't remember the last time you felt connected to me. To you," she agreed quietly. I pulled out the last set of photos. Marcus and Emma together, laughing, holding Oliver, looking like a real family. "You look happy," I observed. "I am happy. With them." She looked up at me. I know how terrible that sounds, but it's true. For the first time in years, I feel like myself again. And what about us? What about our marriage? I know it's over. I've known it was over for months. I just didn't know how to tell you. So you were going to keep living this double life indefinitely? I was trying to figure out how to leave without destroying you. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Too late for that. We sat in silence for a long moment. The ruins of our marriage spread across the table in photographs and wine stains. What happens now? She asked. Now you pack your things and go to them. Tonight. Tonight? Right now? I want you out of this house, out of my life. I'll file for divorce on Monday. She nodded, wiping her eyes. What about the house? Our bank accounts? Everything we built together? My lawyer will be in touch. She stood up slowly, like an old woman. I never meant for it to happen this way. But it did happen this way, and now we both have to live with the consequences. She walked toward the stairs, then paused and turned back. For what it's worth, I am sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to end things before they got this complicated. You deserved better than this. Yes, I said simply. I did. I listened to her, moving around upstairs, packing her things. It took her 2 hours to gather 7 years of shared life into suitcases. When she came back downstairs with her bags, I was still sitting at the dining room table, surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal. I'll send movers for the rest of my stuff next week, she said. Fine. She hesitated at the door. Are you going to be okay? I looked at the woman I'd promised to love forever, who was leaving to start a new life with another man's baby, and felt something that wasn't quite grief and wasn't quite relief. I will be, I said, eventually. She nodded and walked out the door. I heard her car start and drive away, and then the house was quiet for the first time in years. I sat there until dawn, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage, and realized something strange. I felt more awake than I had in months. The pretending was over. The wondering was over. The living in a marriage that had died months ago was over. It was Saturday morning when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Is this Emma's husband? A man's voice, tentative. Ex-husband as of yesterday. Who is this? This is Marcus, I think we need to talk. I should have hung up. I should have told him to go to hell. Instead, I said, I'm listening. Can we meet somewhere? I know this is insane, but I think you deserve to hear the truth from me. I know the truth. You know part of it. There's more you need to know. Something in his voice made me agree. We met at a neutral coffee shop an hour later. He looked exactly like he had in the surveillance photos, but smaller somehow, nervous. I didn't know she was still married, he said before I'd even sat down. I stared at him. What? She told me you were separated. She said you were going through a divorce but still living in the same house until it was finalized. She said it was amicable, that you both knew it was over but were handling it quietly. She's been living with me as my wife for 8 months. We share a bed. We've been trying to have a baby. His face went white. That's not... She said you were sleeping in separate rooms. She said you barely spoke to each other. She lied to both of us. We sat in silence for a moment, two men realizing we'd both been played by the same woman. The baby, I started. Oliver is mine, he said firmly. But I never wanted to be a homewrecker. If I'd known she was still married, really married, none of this would have happened. What would have happened? I would have told her to figure out her marriage first. I don't date married women, period. I've been the other man before, and I swore I'd never do it again. But you did do it again. She always retarded because I thought she was free. She convinced me you were practically roommates waiting for paperwork to be finalized. I studied his face, looking for deception, but found only regret and exhaustion. She moved in with you last night, I said. I know, and we had a long conversation about what happens next. And I told her she needs to figure out who she really is before she can be with me or anyone else. She lied to you for 8 months and lied to me for 8 months. How do I know she won't lie to me next? So what did you decide? I decided that Oliver deserves better than parents who started their relationship built on lies and deception, And Emma deserves to figure out what she really wants instead of running from one man to another. Meaning? Meaning I asked her to move out, temporarily, until she gets her head straight. I sat back in my chair, processing this unexpected development. Where is she now? Hotel, I think. She's supposed to find her own place and spend some time alone. Really alone. We agreed to co-parent Oliver, but the romantic relationship is on pause until she proves she's capable of honesty. And if she can't prove that, then my son will have parents who respect each other but aren't together. Better than parents who are together but built on lies. I had to admit, I respected him for that decision. I know this doesn't fix what she did to you, he continued. And I know I played a part in destroying your marriage, even if I didn't know it. But I wanted you to know that it wasn't some calculated affair where she was juggling two men for the thrill of it. She was genuinely confused and made terrible choices, but she's not a sociopath. Just a coward. Yeah, just a coward. We finished our coffee in relative silence. As we were leaving, Marcus turned to me one more time. For what it's worth, she talked about you a lot. Even when she was complaining about the marriage, it was clear she'd loved you once. Maybe still did. She just didn't know how to fix what was broken. She could have tried talking to me instead of running to you. She should have. You're right. She should have. That afternoon, I got a text from Emma. Can we talk? I know I don't deserve it, but I need to tell you something important. I almost ignored it. I'd heard enough truth for one day. But curiosity won. We met at the park where we'd had our first date 9 years earlier. She looked terrible, exhausted, hollow-eyed, like she hadn't slept in days. Marcus told me he talked to you, she said. He did. So you know he asked me to move out. I know. She sat down on a bench and stared at the ground. I've lost everything, haven't I? My marriage, my relationship with Marcus, my integrity, everything. Yes, I deserve that. Yes. We sat in silence for a few minutes, watching other people's normal lives continue around us. The thing I need to tell you, she said finally, is about why I really started pulling away from you. I think I've heard enough explanations. This isn't an explanation. It's just the truth. You deserve the whole truth. Against my better judgment, I waited for her to continue. 2 years ago, when we started trying to have a baby, I went to my doctor for the initial checkup. To make sure everything was working properly. I remember. I found out something I never told you. I found out that I'd been pregnant before, 3 years ago, and I'd miscarried without ever knowing it. Very early, just a few weeks, but it showed up in my medical history. I turned to look at her. You never told me. I thought it would just make you worry more. And honestly, it made me worry more. About whether I could carry a baby to term, about whether something was wrong with me, about whether we'd ever have the family we wanted. So you started pulling away. I started protecting myself. Every month when the pregnancy test was negative, it felt like proof that I was broken. And every month you were so optimistic, so sure it would happen next time. Your hope made my disappointment worse. Why didn't you just tell me that? Because you would have tried to fix it. You would have wanted to go to specialists and try treatments and find solutions. And I wasn't ready for any of that. I was barely holding myself together. So you found someone else to hold you together. Marcus didn't know about any of this at first. He was just easy, uncomplicated. With him, I didn't have to pretend to be hopeful about a future I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. And then you got pregnant with him. And then I got pregnant with him. She started crying again. Do you know how twisted that is? For 2 years, I couldn't get pregnant with the man I was married to, the man I was supposed to have children with. But I got pregnant immediately with a man I barely knew. Life's ironic like that. It felt like the universe was telling me something. Like maybe you and I weren't meant to be together after all. Or maybe, I said, it was telling you that you were so stressed about getting pregnant with me that your body couldn't relax enough for it to happen. But with him, there was no pressure, no expectations, no disappointment riding on it. She looked at me with surprise. You think that's what happened? I think you sabotaged our marriage because you were afraid of failing at having kids. and then you accidentally succeeded with someone else because there were no stakes. Maybe you're right. She wiped her eyes. Maybe I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too scared to fight for it. Maybe you did. We sat in silence again, two people who had loved each other once upon a time, trying to understand how we'd gotten so lost. What happens now? She asked. Now you figure out how to live with the choices you made. You find your own place, you co-parent Oliver with Marcus, and you learn how to be honest with yourself and everyone else. And you? And I start over. At 33, I start my life over. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I know that doesn't mean anything anymore, but I am genuinely sorry for all of it. I know you are, but sorry doesn't undo the damage. No, it doesn't. She stood up to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, you were never the problem. You were a good husband. I was just too broken to appreciate what I had. I wasn't perfect either, I admitted. I did get buried in work. I did stop noticing the little things. I stopped fighting for us somewhere along the way too. But you didn't cheat. You didn't lie. You didn't create a whole other life. No, I didn't. She nodded and walked away, and I watched her go with a mixture of sadness and relief. 6 months later, I ran into Marcus at a grocery store. He looked better, more rested, more settled. How's Oliver? I asked, surprising myself by actually caring about the answer. He's good. Walking now, getting into everything. Marcus smiled, and I could see the genuine love he had for his son. Emma's doing better too, if you're wondering. I wasn't, but okay. She's in therapy. Real therapy, not just couples counseling, working on understanding why she makes the choices she makes. Good for her. She asks about you sometimes, how you're doing. And how am I doing? Marcus studied my face. You look good. Different. Lighter, maybe. He was right. I felt lighter. I'd sold the house and bought a condo downtown. I'd started dating again. Nothing serious, just reminding myself what it felt like to connect with someone without the weight of 7 years of history and disappointment. I'd taken up rock climbing. I'd traveled to 3 countries I'd always wanted to visit. I'd remembered who I was when I wasn't trying to save a dying marriage. Tell her I'm fine, and I said. Tell her I hope she figures it out. I will. As I walked away, I realized something had shifted. The anger was gone. The hurt was manageable. The betrayal had become just another chapter in my story, not the end of the book. A year later, I got a wedding invitation in the mail. Not from Emma, from my college friend David, who was finally marrying his longtime girlfriend. At the bottom of the invitation, a handwritten note. Hope you can make it. Would love to catch up and hear about this new life you've built. The wedding was beautiful. David looked genuinely happy. His bride was radiant, and their families were celebrating a love that was built on honesty and commitment and all the things my marriage had lacked in the end. During the reception, I found myself thinking about Emma and wondering if she'd ever find that kind of honest love. I hoped she would. Not because I wanted her back, but because everyone deserves to experience real connection with someone who sees them clearly and chooses them anyway. You look thoughtful, said a voice beside me. I turned to find a woman about my age. Dark hair, kind eyes, wearing a blue dress that complemented her skin tone perfectly. Just enjoying watching people who actually like each other get married, and I said. She laughed. I'm Lisa, David's cousin, and you're the infamous ex-husband I've heard so much about. Infamous? David says you handled your divorce with more class than anyone deserved. Said you could have destroyed your ex-wife, but chose to just walk away and rebuild instead. It wasn't class, it was exhaustion. Sometimes walking away is just easier than fighting. Sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. We talked for the rest of the reception. Real conversation about books and travel and career goals and what we learned from our past relationships. She was recently divorced too, from a man who'd slowly stopped seeing her as a person and started seeing her as a convenience. The weird thing, she said as we danced to the last song of the night, is that I'm grateful for the divorce. It taught me what I actually need from a partner. And what's that? Someone who chooses me every day, Not just on the wedding day, not just when things are easy, but every ordinary Tuesday for the rest of our lives. I smiled, thinking about all those Tuesday book clubs that had actually been affair nights. Tuesday is a good day to be chosen. Every day is a good day to be chosen. 6 months later, Lisa and I moved in together. Not because we were running from something, but because we were running towards something. We chose each other with full knowledge of what we'd been through, what we'd learned, what we needed, and what we could offer. 2 years after that, on a Tuesday evening, I proposed to her in the same park where Emma had apologized for destroying our marriage. Not because I wanted to rewrite that history, but because I wanted to prove that the same location could hold completely different kinds of love. Lisa said yes, and as we kissed under the same trees where I'd once sat heartbroken and lost, I realized something profound. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads directly to the best thing that happens to you. Emma had been right about one thing. I had needed to wake up from the dream I'd been living. I just hadn't needed her to wake up with me. On our wedding day, Lisa and I wrote our own vows. Mine included a promise to choose her not just in the big moments, but in all the small, ordinary moments that actually make up a life. Tuesday book clubs and pizza deliveries and grocery store runs and lazy Sunday mornings. In the audience, I spotted a familiar face, Emma sitting in the back row, holding a toddler who looked exactly like Marcus. She caught my eye and nodded once, a gesture that somehow conveyed understanding, regret, and genuine happiness for me all at once. After the ceremony, she approached Lisa and me during the reception. "Congratulations," she said, and I could tell she meant it. "You both look genuinely happy." "We are," Lisa said graciously. "Thank you for coming. I almost didn't, but I wanted to see—" Emma paused, searching for the right words. "I wanted to see what healthy love actually looks like." She looked older, wiser, like someone who'd done the hard work of figuring out who she really was. "How are you?" I asked and realized I actually wanted to know. "Better, different. Still learning how to be honest, but getting better at it." She looked down at Oliver, who was trying to grab the flowers from Lisa's bouquet. "We're both figuring it out as we go. And Marcus? We're trying again, slowly this time, with a lot more honesty and a lot less fantasy about who we think we are versus who we actually are." "Good for you. Good for all of us," she said, looking between Lisa and me. "You deserve someone who could see how amazing you are. I'm sorry it took me so long to realize I wasn't that person." As she walked away with Oliver, Lisa took my hand. "How does that feel?" she asked. "Seeing them? Like closure," I said honestly. "Like proof that sometimes the worst betrayal is actually the biggest gift." "How so?" "Because if she hadn't left, I never would have learned what it felt like to be chosen every day. I would have spent the rest of my life settling for someone who saw me as convenient instead of essential." Lisa squeezed my hand. "Well, for the record, you're definitely essential. So are you." We danced until midnight, surrounded by people who loved us and believed in us and had watched us both learn how to love better because of what we'd survived. Later that night in our hotel room, Lisa fell asleep in my arms, and I lay awake thinking about this strange journey that had brought me to this moment. A pizza delivery notification had ended one life and started another. A betrayal had led to healing. A marriage built on lies had taught me how to recognize truth. I thought about all those Tuesday nights when Emma was living her other life, and I realized I was grateful for every single one. Because every lie she told, every moment she chose someone else, every time she came home pretending to be someone she wasn't, had been leading me toward this moment, this woman, this life that I'd built on honesty and intention, and the daily choice to show up for someone who showed up for me. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is exactly what needed to happen. Sometimes a pizza delivery notification doesn't just expose a lie, it delivers the truth you've been waiting for your whole life. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that truth tastes better than you ever imagined it could. The end.